The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, available online at HalliCasser-Jayne.com. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show is supported by the following. Welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. I am Halli Casser-Jayne. Let's talk. Today on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, 2 stories of terrorism. Up first, photographer Jane Schreibman, who had a brush with fate when she happened to cross an odd-looking object on the street in her Chelsea neighborhood that turned out to be a bomb. Her discovery led to the capture of the man alleged to be responsible for the early explosion that day that had injured 29. What a story. And in our second segment, the gut-wrenching story of Farida Khlaf, a young Yazidi girl captured and brutally raped and tortured by ISIS, who orchestrated her own escape, who lived to tell the tale recounted in the book, The Girl Who Escaped ISIS. My guest today, the author of the book and journalist Andrea C. Hoffman. But before we begin, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show is always available online at HalliCasser-Jayne.com. In mid-September, a deafening explosion rocked the Chelsea district of Manhattan, injuring 29 people, blowing out scores of windows, and forcing the evacuation of at least 2 buildings. The blast went off in a construction dumpster outside the townhouse inn. 3 hours after the blast, a second device was discovered 4 blocks away by photographer Jane Schreibman, a longtime resident of Chelsea. About Jane Schreibman. After studying photography at the San Francisco Art Institute, Jane, a New Jersey native, moved to Manhattan, where she rented an apartment in an old tenement building and set up a darkroom. While holding down various odd jobs as taxi driver, camera girl, waitress in a little French outfit, photo assistant, she completed her first body of work, a series of self-portraits. They were published in Camera 35. Thereafter, she began photographing street people and night festivals. She traveled to Italy and later India and Pakistan. Her work has been shown in galleries worldwide. And then Schreibman had a meeting with fate. After a friend called to tell her about the blast, she ventured out of her apartment to investigate and stumbled upon a weird-looking pot on the side of the road that looked to her like a kid's experiment more than something menacing. Nevertheless, she decided to report what she saw to the authorities. That is just the beginning of her story. Let's talk. Jane?
Yes?
First of all, how lovely to have somebody who I have known, I'm not even going to say it, and don't you say it either.
Many years.
We've known each other forever and a day, and how wonderful to get to talk to you on my show. This is just thrilling. And
great
also,
to be here.
Well, honey, how lovely. And on such an enormous and interesting and groundbreaking story for you personally, and having known you all these years, I'm so thrilled for you. Jane, it is amazing and an adventure like probably none you've ever been on before. So let's start with the night of the attack. You did hear the first explosion. I
heard the first explosion, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it was thunder. And then I forgot about it. When the rain didn't come, I had forgotten about it.
You live in an old building with thick walls?
And then it was like 8:30, and then around 10 o'clock, a friend of mine called and said, "Jane, are you okay?" And I said, "Why shouldn't I be okay?" And she said, "Because there's an explosion on 23rd Street." So I went running out to see what had happened. And I passed a very strange-looking object, didn't pay much attention to it, and went to 23rd Street, or tried to see what had happened. And I got as far as 25th Street, and it was all barricaded. But I had like this nagging vision of this object I had seen on the street. So I retraced my steps, and I got back to it, and I looked at it a second time, and I realized that it hadn't been thrown out with a bunch of garbage like I thought originally, because it was the weekend and people tend to clean up and throw their garbage on the street, but it was sitting there by itself. And why would a pot be sitting on the sidewalk with wires coming out of it?
Really? Right.
It was really weird, and I remembered hearing that people make bombs out of pressure cookers. I didn't know this was a pressure cooker, but it was a pot. And then I remembered about 7 years ago, these guys in Times Square called 911 because they saw a car that was parked and the motor was running. And they thought it was suspicious, and it turned out to be a bomb. And I was always impressed by those guys thinking to call 911, taking the responsibility. And then there's in New York, whenever you go on the subway, they say, if you see something, say something. So those three things made me come upstairs and call 911.
Wow. Listen, I know you're a smart cookie. I don't know if I would have had that presence of mind to think, yeah, you better go, call somebody. How weird was it looking? I mean, I the photographs, every time I look on, you can't really see them.
Right. And you'd think I'm a photographer. I would have taken a photograph. But It didn't even cross my mind to take a picture because I take photographs of very specific situations.
Right.
And this didn't fit into it.
Right. It's like RD2D2. That's the impression that I have of what this object looked like.
Well, it was like a pot, and it had wires sticking out of the top, and then the wires were all taped together with like a rectangular object that I didn't know what it was. And then they all sort of disappeared into a little white plastic bag. And I don't know if the bag had just blown there, it was part of the garbage of the street, or if it had been placed there.
Was it the size of a pot, like a pressure cooker?
Yeah, it turned out to be a pressure cooker.
Okay, that's what it was.
It was like a pasta pot.
Right, exactly, right. Or what our old, Bubba's would have made, God knows what.
You know what was really weird? No. I looked at the surveillance tapes, and 2 different guys walked by it, looked at it, and kicked it and walked away.
And nothing happened. Wow.
Isn't that weird? Well, yeah. They think that when they took it out of it wasn't placed there on the street. It was in a duffel bag. And 2 men came along and took it out of the bag and put it on the sidewalk.
Why'd they do that?
They wanted the bag.
Oh, New York.
So they walked off with the bag, and then they dropped it. I don't know why.
Oh, God, that's so wild. I mean, that's just absolutely so
crazy.
It is crazy. The whole thing is crazy.
Story is stranger than fiction.
Absolutely. So, how did you know who to call, and who did you call exactly?
I just went upstairs and called 911.
Oh, that's what you did.
And I said, they say if you see something suspicious to call, and this is sort of suspicious. It's a pot with wires coming out, and also because there had been a bombing already on 23rd Street. So 4 things made me call.
And question, did they buy what you said? And
yeah, she was great. She said, this is high priority. Someone will be there momentarily.
Okay.
And I went downstairs a few minutes later, and there was a man, and I walked up to him to tell him where it was, and he saw me coming, and he said, run, get off the block.
I know, this is something, I want to go into that a little bit more in detail. First of all, you left it. You went upstairs, you called 911, and an unclothed, non-copy kind of looking guy, or somebody in full.
It was a state trooper.
It was
wearing an olive uniform.
And he came all by himself.
No, I think he had a walkie-talkie, and there were 2 other people down the street.
Okay, and then you went out to meet him.
I went out to show them where this object was, but he had already gone there because I had given the address. Okay,
and then he says to you,
and
did you?
I can't really run, so now I'm thinking, what did I actually do? I must have I don't know.
You walked fast.
Yeah, walked fast.
And went back up to your apartment? Where'd you go?
No, he said, get off the block, so I just ran off the block, and I have a friend around the corner. So I went to her house, and I went into her kitchen, and her roommate had been on 23rd Street buying a taco when the explosion went off. So the 2 of us were there. Pretty exciting.
It is really, and it gets even crazier as far as I'm concerned. So it didn't take them long to get it out of there, I assume, right?
Oh, well, that took a long time because nobody wanted to touch it. So they had to get a robot to come. And I didn't see this because I was off the block. But what I read is that a robot would nudge it.
Wow.
Nudge it over to the truck.
So
I don't know what happened. I didn't see it. I wasn't here.
So what happened next? How did the press contact you?
Oh, the next morning, I thought the whole situation was so strange that I wrote it in Facebook. I said, last night I went downstairs and I saw a pressure cooker bomb in front of my house. and the police came and said run, so I did. So somebody in the Daily Mail saw that and came over and did a story, and that's how the whole thing started.
All right, let me go back 2 steps. So after the thing was dismantled and you went home to your apartment.
Well, I'd go downstairs about every hour from my friend's house because I really didn't want to sleep there. I wanted to come home, and they wouldn't let me back on the street. And finally, I found a detective who interviewed me and then escorted me home. So I got home at 3 a.m.
Jane, what are you feeling in all of this? Is it frightening? Is it
I still don't believe that it was a bomb.
So there's denial.
You know why? Because it was so funny looking. It looked like such a funny looking thing, hard to take seriously. And I spent a lot of time in Pakistan where they have pictures of like landmines, and they don't look, and they're just solid round balls. So that's what I would expect a bomb to look like.
Wow, it's like an out of body experience, I would think.
Oh, it was just. It took me a long time to realize that it was a bomb in front of my house, and it could have been really scary, but it wasn't. So then there's this. You now get caught up in the snowball of the news
and your 15 minutes of true fame. How?
It was weird because on Sunday, it was mostly on Sunday, NBC, ABC, CBS. They were like lined up on my street waiting for me to finish with one so I could tell the whole story over again.
Okay. So here's the deal, though. And having, done this kind of thing myself in different, I'm no hero, you are. They were actually, because of you doing this, they apprehended him. Think about.
That's great because.
No, that's great.
Fellow. That was
great.
Scary when you knew that he was still at large.
Right, and he could have come after you, Jane.
That was the scariest part, to know that until they caught him.
I mean, for sure. But I want to talk to you about. I mean, if you hadn't had the presence of mind to call the authorities, we don't know what.
I'm a nosy person.
Well.
So I'm always like poking my nose in and getting involved in everything.
You were like that as a kid, but I'm not going to tell anybody because I know. But listen,
I was born that way.
That's it. What can I tell you? But I do think it's really odd because you got caught up in the whole thing. But the fact of the matter is, all joking aside, had you not had the presence of mind, we don't know what would have happened. That is a hero to me. And in a world where we have so few heroes, I just want to applaud you for having.
Thanks, Halli.
No, sweetheart, because it is true. I probably would have run the other way and said it's not my problem. No, I wouldn't, because I'm like you. We grew up in the same place.
Yeah.
With the same thing and had very similar adult lives. But that being said, here you are. And I have to ask you, how has this all changed your perspective on life?
I think so. I think it has. It made, like I've always said, life is stranger than fiction. And now I really believe it. Like this hit home. And when you think, that couldn't be, that couldn't be a bomb or anything, where you say, no, he's not really beating that person up, or, no, that's not really happening. You can't do that anymore. I think the world has become the kind of place where you have to pay attention and take responsibility for what's going on around you.
You're still on the crazy with the press. You're still doing, obviously, you're talking to us, and it goes on for the next whatever.
I think the TV is over.
Okay. Well, you never know what's going to happen next. I mean, I don't think it's a story that I think the next terrorist attack, they'll be, God forbid, they'll be calling your name. But this I have to ask you also, and I think that this is real. I don't know whether it's hit yet, whether it will hit, whether you're prepared for it to hit, but I would think there's some kind of aftershock to this.
Oh, if there is,
call me.
I haven't had a chance to experience it because I've been occupied every day talking about it.
Yeah. How do you sleep at night?
It hasn't affected my sleep because I'm so tired.
Yeah, right there. I get it, kiddo. I get it. Listen, I really did want to talk to you. I wanted this in the can. So I can, you have it for the future, and we have it because we're lucky to have you on the show, and thank God for old friends. But honey, you are a hero, and in a world, as I started to say before, where there are so few, thank you.
Thank you, Halli.
My pleasure. I've been speaking with Jane Schreibman. truly a modern-day hero. For more information about Jane and her photography, visit her website at janeschreibman.com. You are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. My guest today, photographer Jane Schreibman, the woman who discovered the bomb that led to the capture of the Chelsea bomber, and journalist and author Andrea C. Hoffman, co-author of The Girl Who Escaped ISIS, Farida Khlaf. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. And we are back on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Thank you for being here. In the early summer of 2014, Farida Khlaf was a typical Yazidi teenager living with her parents and 3 brothers in her village in the mountains of northern Iraq. And one horrific day, she lost everything. ISIS invaded her village, destroyed her family, and sold her off into sexual slavery. The Girl Who Escaped ISIS, Farida's story, tells the story of her incredible account of defying the odds and escaping a life of torture in order to share her story with the world. Devastating and inspiring, The Girl Who Escaped ISIS is an astonishing first-hand account of courage, resilience, and hope in the face of unimaginable violence. With me today, the co-author of The Girl Who Escaped ISIS, Andrea C. Hoffman. Hoffman lives in Berlin, working as an author, and is a journalist for Focus magazine. Let's talk. Listen, Andrea, This is unspeakable. This is such a horror, but so important that these stories get out and that we humanize the victims of ISIS. So let's start, before we even get into the nitty-gritty of it, with you, a journalist who specializes in the Middle East and the condition of women in Muslim countries. I want to know how you got involved in this in the first place.
You mean involved with the Yazidi issue or involved in the Middle East?
Well, involved with Farida, actually. How did you guys get together on this story?
I was traveling the Middle East as a journalist. I do that quite a lot in order to cover the issues. And, of course, lately it has been ISIS and also the Yazidi drama. And so I was going to northern Iraq to the refugee camps, and that's where I met her. I was actually introduced to her by her social worker, and we had a very good connection. I was quite impressed by her character and by her strength, and that's why we connected.
So how about you? How about you running around in this lunatic asylum that is the Middle East these days? And how they liking a girl running around doing this over there? It must be a hindrance.
Well, it depends what you want to do. If you want to get in touch with women, it's not a hindrance. It's the only way to do it, because the women won't speak to men. And the only way to reach out to women of the Middle East is being a woman. That's the only way you can talk to them. So I don't see it as a hindrance. In fact, sometimes, it's even better to be a woman because I can cover myself, that gives me some protection. I'm not recognized as easily as men are. And then if you have the people you can trust, it's, they treat women with more politeness, and they try to care for them.
Okay.
So,
all right, I'll buy that.
If it's really such a disadvantage, I mean, it might be if you're in the war front, but not behind the scenes.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I worried about you when I was reading this book and saying, what in the hell? I was a war correspondent myself in Latin America, and I could tell you that sometimes it was not good being a woman. Most of the time it worked out better. So you meet Farida, and she's was 19 years old when she was captured by ISIS in the early summer of 2014. And on December 13th, she actually led 6 girls on a dangerous and daring escape. More fantastic than any movie, by the way. So here's my thing. When you met her after the deed. What kind of shape did you discover her in, mentally, emotionally, even physically?
That was the interesting thing. When I first met her, she was surprisingly well, at least at what she seemed to be. You know, I looked at her and I knew what has happened to her, a little bit of it, but she was, you know, walking upright and looked into my eyes. You know, so she was, you know, trying to appear strong, and she is in a way. But of course, on the other hand, she's very hurt, and. But she will not show that immediately. She has this surface of, I survived ISIS, and what do you want? So yes, but then when you go into details, of course, she is highly traumatized, and she still has scars on her back. But I think those scars on her back is one of the the least things we have to matter. You know, she's very, very hurt, and she has good days and bad days. And throughout our interview, you know, very often we had to stop because she said, it's really getting to me, having to think about this again. I need a break, you know. Or she would get angry, just remembering how they treated her. It was a very difficult process for her.
And for you, I'm sure, to try and pull it all out of her. Now, she's not a Muslim, and I want you to explain that because I think a lot of people do not know much about the Yazidi people, which is what she is. Can you give us a little background on that?
Yes, that's right. The Yazidi minority, they are... it's a very ancient Oriental religion, which has nothing to do with Christianity or Islam. It's something very unique. It's more related to the ancient Persian religions, and they, for example, when they pray, they turn towards the sun, and they have a sacred place which is called Lalesh, which is very close to where Farida lives. They have a pilgrimage there once a year, and they believe in angels, and their main angel is the peacock angel, who, you know, unfortunately the peacock is in the Middle East is an ancient symbol for the devil. That's why the Muslims think they are devil worshippers, but in fact they're not, because this peacock angel in their belief system is a very positive figure, and it has nothing evil. So, you know, it's just their item, their angel they worship, and but there's this misunderstanding, and that's why some Muslims, the radical Muslims, think they're impure and they're unbelievers, and ISIS thinks they have to kill them.
Right. Now let's establish this. She's living in this village. I guess it's northern Iraq. Is that where the village is? A very normal life with a mom, a dad, some siblings, right? And then one day, ISIS comes, and it's unexpected, correct? And
it's totally unexpected. She was a junior in high school. She was enjoying her vacation. She had a good time at home, you know, relaxing in the rose garden that her mom had planted. And she had watched the news, you know. She knew that ISIS had captured Mosul. But, you know what it's like watching news. News always seemed to be far away, somewhere in the television set.
Right,
you know?
it had
nothing
else
to do with her.
Right.
So this radically changed when ISIS besieged the village, and they couldn't get out anymore, and they wanted them to convert and become Muslims. And the whole village is Yazidi, and religion is very, very important to them. They're very pious people, and it was out of the question for them to become Muslims. So they turned that down. And then, you know, the Arab Muslim Arab villages that were around the place. They were sort of cooperating with ISIS, and they were telling the villagers, okay, you just hand over your weapons and nothing will be done to you. No harm will be done. And that was just an outright lie. But the villagers did hand over their weapons, hoping that that way they will be saved. And instead, just the opposite happened. ISIS came in to the village with their trucks and their rifles, and they forced everybody out of their houses and chased them to the school building. So Farida had to go with her mom and her dad and her 4 brothers. They all went to school. They took all their valuables with them because they were told to do so, their jewelry and their phones and some money, the money they had. And again, they thought, okay, we're just going to hand it all over, and that way, that's going to be it, that way we will escape. But that was not the plan. In the school, they were separated, men and women, and again, they were asked if they would agree to become Muslims, and again, they said no, it's out of the question. And then ISIS told the men, okay, you will face the consequences, and they forced them onto trucks and told them they would drive them into the mountains. So the men at this point thought, okay, we are going to lose our home, we are going to be chased out of our villages, okay. But they didn't think that they couldn't predict what was going to happen, and what was happening was that they were driven out to the field, and they all had to stand in a line, and then they were just massacred. They were just shot. All the men of the village were shot. 500 men, including Farida's father and her 2 oldest brothers. They were all massacred. And luckily enough, yes.
No. Go ahead. Finish what you were going to say. I'm sorry.
The oldest brother died. The father also died, but her second oldest brother pretended to be dead. He received a bullet in his chest and in his arm, and he fell down. And when they checked on him to see if he was breathing, he just held his breath, and then when they turned away from him, he just took the chance and ran away. That's how he survived.
And let's talk about her, and let me give you this. Okay, there's an honor in women, and before we even get into what happened to her, could you just give us a quick understanding of that?
Yes, they it's a very remote village, and the Yazidi society has very, very strict moral rules. For a girl, she has to marry and she has to be a virgin. Otherwise, the honor of the family is destroyed. So that is how they are brought up, and that was very much inside Farida.
So what happened? Right. So what happened? Go ahead, sweetie. I apologize. We have a delay, so it's getting me a little crazy.
Yeah. They separated the old women from the young women, and Farida and her classmates were driven to Mosul, and then after that to Raqqa in Syria, and they were sold. They were sold to ISIS fighters as slaves, as sex slaves, actually. And she had no clue what was going to happen to her because, in a closed society like that, you don't speak about those things, sexuality. She didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but she knew she couldn't allow it to happen. She knew she couldn't allow any man to touch her body, and that's why she tried to kill herself before it happened. And
I want to say this. Did I read this right? But I felt that these attempts on her own life were about dignity, not about weakness. It was about strength.
Yes. She wanted to pull herself out. She wanted to prevent what they were going to do to her. Yes, it was about dignity.
It was about dignity. It was also about strength. I mean, some people would go, I want to die. I'm not going to let this happen. Other people say, you're not going to do this to me. I'm going to get control. I will end it before you can do that to me. There's a difference in those two psychological motives.
Yes, it was definitely the second.
Right, yeah.
I'm gonna be gone when you want to do this. But eventually, she dropped that topic because she had lost that battle, and
she used different modes of survival at that point. A very bright,
yes.
Clever woman, correct? Didn't you find her that way?
Yes, incredibly, yes. So, once, it had happened, and it wasn't just rape, it was terrible mistreatment and beatings with electric cables and everything. She still has the scars on her back. She couldn't walk for a couple of weeks because they had treated her so bad.
What was her take on the men who are ISIS? Not your take. I'm going to ask you. That's different. But what was her understanding, coming from the purity that she came from, only knowing good and not evil, and running across this? I don't even know. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know that I could compute it in my mind. I could understand it in my mind. How you wrap yourself, that's an American expression, wrap yourself around the unfathomable.
She always challenged them because she and I also, she didn't buy it. She didn't buy their religious justification. She is smart enough to, she knows Arabic perfect. She can read the Quran, and she could tell them what's inside and what's not inside. And she said, "You're just making this up, and you should be ashamed." And she did say that in their face. And I think she very correctly perceived them as criminals taking advantage of this special situation, having power over her out of very low, how can you say, motivation that has nothing to do with religion.
And you,
it's not in,
of course
you
not.
You can rape women.
No, well, of course not. And now you, from your vantage point, from your perspective, give me an understanding of this. Have you figured, is this just sheer evil cult? What is this? What is going on here? I would love somebody who has been in the middle of it to explain it.
I think it's young men gathering as a group, creating their own reality that fits their purposes of,
domination.
Domination, capturing women for sexual purposes, getting money, enriching themselves, getting power, and, those very basic evil motivations. This is a way to get to them.
But let me ask you this: the word cult, right? A cult mentality.
Yeah.
How it got so large, so fast? How it's metastasized worldwide so quickly? And it seems like the good guys, Western, Arab countries that don't sanction this kind of garbage, blah blah, can't get a handle on it. Can't seem to understand what's really going on. Your thoughts?
I think it's tempting for young men that, have some sort of scorn, that have too much testosterone. And, you have this problem of unemployment in the Middle East. You have this problem in Iraq of the Sunnis feeling disadvantages by the Shia. And, this is an easy way out. You have a lot of sexual frustration because many young men cannot get a woman without a certain material standard.
But that I understand. That I understand.
In the West, you have these guys that have never had any adventure in their life, and they want to do something really exciting. And if they can have a teenage girl alongside, and rape her, wonderful.
Yes, I get all of that, but what I don't understand is the response from people who are supposedly the domesticated, smart, sophisticated, thoughtful Westerners, and if you will, others, that they can't seem to, they're not either taking it seriously enough or they're letting it go on. They're not really fighting it. With one hand tied behind their back, the West is fighting this. What were you going to say?
I think initially there were people trying to take advantage of it, as the Sunnis in Iraq, as Saudi Arabia, who wanted, or Qatar, trying to get a step into Syria, and, too many powers meddling there, and everybody thinking, great, we just accept a little bit of this evil and let them do some a little part of that job that we want to get done, and all of a sudden this thing is out of the bottle and you can't get it in again. I think we have been looking away for much too long because it was in the interest of some parties. If we really want to defeat ISIS and all work together, the U.S. and Europe and Russia and Middle Eastern countries like I said, Saudi Arabia, it should be possible.
It should be. So far, not so good. Listen, I know that Amal Clooney.
Everybody together so far.
I didn't hear you. What did you say? Everybody what?
I think so far not everybody is working together.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. I agree with you. So listen to me. So human rights lawyer Amal Clooney, she announced that she's going to represent the victims of the Yazidi genocide as she seeks an investigation by the International Criminal Court against the Islamic State. But honestly, how important is – well, I think it's great on the one hand, and on the other, it's optics to me. Do you know the word optics? To me – It seems so little. It doesn't seem enough. It seems like, okay, fine, we're getting the attention to, I'm sure women worldwide will certainly pay attention to it maybe, but it just doesn't seem enough. Does it seem enough to you?
See it as one step.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because Farida and many others dream about justice, and they want these guys before court, and they want a trial, and if it's up to Farida, she wants them in jail for the rest of their life. It's just one step, and if it's a famous person like Mrs. Clooney, wonderful.
Oh, okay, right.
I think, how media attention works. So why not let her in the boat, and hopefully she can do something, and hopefully others will pick up on it and do more.
I hope so. Now listen, she's in Germany now with her mother, right, Farida, and some time has passed. I don't know that you ever heal from something like this. What happens now? She is quote unquote deflowered. I don't know whether she has mainstreamed into German society or whether she's still living in a Yazidi small group of people. How is she doing? Is she able to move forward? Will she be able to marry, have children, live a normal life? What's the status?
She is still in between worlds, I believe, because she has her mother and her brothers and also some other relatives in Germany, and the Yazidis do have a lot of contact with each other in Germany, so we have a Yazidi society in Germany, if you like. And on the other hand, on the other side, she's inside German society, and she is dealing with that. But it's it's something that doesn't go together easy. There's some points to be discussed. And I hope for her that she will find a model for herself. And I hope it's going to be different from the strict Yazidi model, which is very hard to live in these days with all those girls having these terrible experiences and so many men that are dead. One thing about the Yazidi religion is also that they can also only marry amongst themselves, which is very hard right now because so many men got killed. So that's another thing they have to discuss amongst themselves, and I hope that they open up a little bit, and that way she will gain some sort of normality and she's only 20. She has everything ahead of her, and she's strong. So does she? I don't.
Does she laugh? Can she laugh? Is she beyond the life is just dark? Has she moved on at least from that?
She doesn't laugh a lot.
Oh.
She's quite serious. But it's the but. Yeah. I got a question for you. She's strong.
Here's my question for you. When you get that tied in with somebody who's gone through something that utterly horrid, bizarre, it has to, and you had to have become her in a sense in order to write this book that you wrote, which is terrific. How are you? How did it affect you? What's left on you? Any inner scars of your own now?
It was not easy to write this book. The writing process was quite painful, and I did dream about it at night. And as you say, when you write a book, you have to relive it, everything that happens. So yes, while I was writing, I was with her in Syria, and I was with her while she was being tortured. And yes, it's painful, but I always thought it's something very, very necessary.
Very powerful, very important. If you had one word to say to Barack Obama, what would it be?
To Barack Obama? Support Hillary. That's my biggest fear for now, because things are going to get a lot worse if the other party wins.
I've been speaking with Andrea C. Hoffman, co-author of The Girl Who Escaped ISIS, by way of Atria Books, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. For more information, visit Andrea's website at AndreaCHoffman.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. Associate producer,